First, I would like just to okay these minutes from the Thursday, March 11th meeting. Does anyone see anything in the minutes that need to be changed?
I did add the article numbers to, I just had it as headings, but
Okay.
all the articles we discussed last time, so I just put the numbers in there. It's not in your copy, but I just added them, so they were more easily identified.
Okay, that's good, yeah. Yeah. Does anyone else have any suggestions or changes? Actually, Tom, you weren't here, were you?
Yes, I came.
You weren't here.
I wasn't here either.
You weren't here either, so that leaves just 3 of us. Does that mean we need to wait for a quorum to vote on the
1,
minutes?
2, 3.
If you two, I mean, I don't know the rule on that.
Where's Helen when you need her?
We could put out doing the minutes for the next meeting.
You probably need a quorum.
Yeah, I
Okay,
would say, yeah.
so, I mean, we have a quorum here, but we don't have a quorum of people who attended this meeting.
Right, yes.
So, I'd like to make a motion that we hold off on okaying the minutes till we have enough people here to okay it properly.
Second.
Okay. In favor? All right, so let's get right on to the agenda. We're going to open it up with the Shellfish Department update from Nancy.
I'm gonna take notes.
We have a lot to talk about: the quahog relay, mulching, propagation, and rotation of closed propagation areas. Nancy found a GPS point that was incorrect, that needs to be corrected in our regs, map, and appendix. Nancy.
So I guess the biggest news, anybody can read the monthly report and kind of get some of the details of what we've been doing over the past 2 months. But the biggest news is that we launched our barge today.
Oh,
And
Yay.
Johnny couldn't have been happier. He looks awesome. Check out our Facebook page. I put on some videos and some photos. You know, we got all of our oysters out of the pit under Johnny's direction. And do you want to come up and talk a little bit about propagation, what we're doing, Johnny?
Yeah, if you have some other housekeeping details to do while we're here, but whatever you want, Nancy.
Not really. I mean, anybody can read my report, but the interesting stuff obviously is the propagation.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyways, we obviously all know each other. I'm, Johnny, and we had a pretty, fairly full pits, and we have realized good survival out of our pits. I've been watching the water temperature. I saw a temperature in the 50s yesterday. I had 46 at the crack of dawn this morning. So I'm optimistic that we should begin growing soon. So we're bringing up the topic of rotational closures. And what a closure means in our Shellfish Department minds is that an area receives a series of inputs. The first of which would be a significant amount of culch. Secondly, we would dedicate a low of 30,000 oysters to that area that at least a significant portion should realize some spawning success this year. So far, as we've been kicking it around, our first idea was the west side, in which we find a relatively barren area and determine the upper length on the slope. There's always a sort of a spot on the grade where the oysters like to set, and they don't appear to want to set much higher than that. And then moving down into the water, where we would like to concentrate on our efforts, on a place where, say, we got knee or calf deep water on a big low tide. Okay, our objective is to throw some stuff out of the ice to try to protect some of our seed and culch with the ice. and then, you know, closing the area. My idea is that we close an area and open it at, say, September, October of the third year, to try to realize some spawning. If it works out, we could step it, you know, keep finding and closing areas along that drainage and see where we go from there. Of course, there's problems. It's difficult to mark. It's difficult to keep buoys out there. There's a lot of boat activity, so it's you know, there are some patrol issues. However, Nancy's adept hand has gotten Chris a new job description in which he's focusing on boat patrol. So the boats, the harbor will be patrolled by boats a lot more than you've seen in the past. And it's gonna be a good system where Chris monitors everything and then grabs one of us and then we go board boats. And in addition, we have the ability to pick up cages that are being purged on grants, you know, pull up the buoys and go through them and look for size compliance. So the open high tide harbor will have more of an enforcement presence than we've had in the past. So that's that's our first idea. If people do not want to see any areas of the west side closed, then we'll move to other options. One other option would be there's some deeper type areas where I feel pretty good about catching a set and surviving, sort of at the big tide level of places on the Herring River, specifically the bulkhead area, next to the town bed. And then if we have to, we also have the deep area of the Indian Neck recreational area in which we could sort of propagate in water and not step on any commercial toes. It's when you read about any shellfish restoration projects, rotational closures is always, you know, 1 or 1A on the list. So the idea is that the town resources, the mulch, and the seed that we put there spawns before it goes into baskets. There is no way, I can't think of a scenario in which we would petition the state for a closure beyond 3 years. I just don't believe in it. But you know, but we could change our minds as well. This hasn't been done in a long time. I don't have exacting, you know, predictions or results, but it's what you can do. Another thing is that whichever area we close will also receive an allotment of contaminated cohogs, which we really love because that's already spawning stock. And no matter what we want to do, the state makes us leave that stuff there for the administrative spawning period, which is basically the whole growing season. As it stands right now, the only areas that are just allowed to spawn are Chipman Cove, Duck Creek, and the prohibited area at in the Herring River. I don't claim to have all the answers. None of this, no actions are going to start for over a month anyway. And I would just like to, welcome input and suggestions, and that's really about it. We're going to be careful. We walk areas, we buoy areas. Nancy and I have discussed it, and we're dead set against dumping dead shell on live oysters. And we're willing to walk miles and work more tides in order to ensure, that doesn't happen. Another thing is none of this is cast in stone. If we close an area and it looks like it's overstocked, or receiving some, some mortality or something, we can very quickly open up the area. And then as far as opening areas, we have a lot of things at our disposal as well. We don't necessarily have to open it wide open. We can open it for a weekend. We can open it for a day. So, but spawning sanctuaries, anywhere in any literature, anywhere, that's the primary management tool. So, I mean, in my idea, I would like to do a significant area instead of more small areas. But we will do more small areas as well. And we are completely open to suggestion. I would love nothing more than to devote the bulk of our resources to South Wellfleet and get that going again. But I just don't think we're gonna have the winters there anymore. This winter was by almost any measure a mild winter, but except for one rather brief ice event, and it was devastating. So we want to try some stuff in the water. By keeping it in some shallow water, we at least give the hand pickers the ability to go out there and get some as well. So it's not a total boat fishery. And like I said, once we get that area established, we have a couple years, and we can discuss every opening regime under the sun. We're completely humble. We don't claim to know everything. In my time here, I've been in this job for a few years now, and in my time here, the only closure that we've ever enacted was the nitrogen mitigation project in front of the cottages on the thing, in which the opening was badly mismanaged. You know what I mean? We should not have petitioned the state for that extra time and watched those saleable oysters just go away. All right, we view oysters as a crop. But what we'd like to do, we'd like to take the town resources, the rather expensive seed, plenty of effort went into it, but that's neither here nor there. Culture's up to $1,000 a load. So if we would like to establish an area where we got some seed, like I said, I'm confident that some of that seed will spawn this year, and then should it overwinter, a lot of it will spawn next year. If we catch a good set this year, we stand the chance of some late spawning next year, and then the following summer, we can infer that if it's not going to spawn, it's going to spawn, and then we could open it up. Basically, after the administrative spawning system, period from the state, which would be sometime around October 1st. So,
Sounds good?
yeah, that's about it. The office is open, our cell phones are open. We don't need to be right, I mean, we totally value you guys' experience with the bottom and everything. So that's where we are, and you know what? If we don't get a closure done this year, it doesn't mean we're going to work any less hard to propagate the harbor.
So how large area are you talking about for this closure? Like 2 acres, 3 acres, 4 acres, 5 acres?
Out five-ish.
Out five-ish?
Five-ish, I would say.
And then each year try to do another spot.
Another
We can
spot,
start
each
opening
year,
other
yeah,
rotations.
opening other rotations. Remember that we close an area, we have discretion on how long to open it. Okay, and we have discretion on it. So, we get this area, it looks real good, okay? So we can delay that opening. We may want to open it on, the calendar may say October 1st, okay? But the big tides may start October 5th. So we could delay that opening till October 5th so that should hand pickers want to go out there, they can take a skiff out and, you know, and on a calm day, work in ankle deep water. If we got something going, you know, it could be a boon for Vibrio season, because guys would be able to pick in the water, you know, like you guys used to do in the river. And
But this would be in an area where the draggers could work too.
there's, yes, if it's past the no drag line, the draggers, it's dragger country. I don't see, you know, dragging's part of our culture. You know what I mean? I like it, you know? I mean, there's sometimes I don't like it. You know, waiting for a boat that left the dock at noon to come in at 8 o'clock at night isn't any fun. You know, but you know, it's you know, it's part of our harbor, and it's something I love. You know, so.
Sounds good.
I just want
Yeah.
to say, so I tried to capture all of what Johnny's saying in the draft propagation plan, but when you go on to the second page, it says potential idea for rotational management closure. I said number 7, open the area the following September, but it should be, you know, 2 or 3 years down the road. So that's wrong, so just correct it as you're looking at it. I think he said the 3rd September.
Yes.
Or October, actually. So just note that. And then when we get into the actual Quahog relay, there's a map in there. And I just kind of mapped out what the west side inside the Quahog no drag line might look like. We wanted to come forward with an idea, but obviously, as Johnny says, we're taking input. Doesn't have to be this idea, but we wanted you to show we gave something some thought.
So you were thinking about putting cohogs on past the no drag line on the west side, not
Yes.
where we can.
Why, Dave? Yeah. If we're closing an area, okay, we're going to take the opportunity to put some of these cohogs there. Okay. Now remember, these cohogs are already of spawning size.
Yeah.
Okay. So some cohog spawn were out there, and then there's ancillary factors as well. Is that when we put that contaminated contaminated cohogs out there, okay, when one comes into that area with his drag, he is no longer just violating a town, management line. One is violating a state prohibited area closure. You know.
So and you said you were going to put down 30,000 oysters and culch.
Mulch, okay, I'm hoping for about 30 to 40,000 oysters. I think I can guarantee 30.
And 5 acres.
Yeah, so, something like that. And I don't, you know what I mean? I don't have my handy dandy anchor thumb.
Yeah.
I mean, the beach is a linear way. It is my belief that the tide in the set rips up and down beaches. And the objective is to get some stuff in the water. I have zero confidence in Southwell Fleet. I mean, I'm going to culch there, but I have zero confidence in throwing seed there. And if we did make a winter, I can't imagine asking for another winter in Southwell Fleet. And then there's the footprint of aquaculture in Southwell Fleet is so huge that in order to put a significant amount of culch, it's going to be a conflict with current grant use there. I cannot just culch, say in Logie Bay. The bottom has just turned so volatile in that section. And I want to stress that we got some time. The earliest that the closure would happen, I would say, would be June 5th, under perfect conditions. June 6th, June 8th, something like that. Because obviously you want to put the mulch down before you put the seed down. You don't want to bury seed with mulch. So that's where we're at. And I don't know of any way to make it more scientific. I think we could bring Jacques Cousteau in here and he'd be confused.
He's dead.
I think
Philippe's still alive.
if it's open to
Fell
draggers,
through the glacial crevasse, but
I just think if it's closed for 3 years,
It's a
I'm not saying,
slack
I'm not,
3 years.
yeah, I'm not,
Slack
or whatever,
3
it's
years, yeah.
closed at all. I mean, I'm not saying that this is a bad idea at all. I think,
No,
I think
yeah.
it's a great idea.
Yeah.
But I think that on the west side, it's not a good idea. I think a rotational closure somewhere would be a good spot.
Okay.
But like, I think that the west side would probably not be a great idea, only, well, it's in.
On the inside of Flat Rock.
The inside of Flat Rock would be a good idea.
Okay.
But like, you know, like, I think that we would wipe those oysters out so fast, drag.
Well, that's where that's where, you know, a creative opening comes in. There's no perfect solution. The primary goal of it is to let the set we catch spawn.
Right, I just think,
You know?
I
So,
totally get it.
yeah.
I just think like if you're trying to protect it from the ice and trying to get wild pickers in there, which, you know, I think is awesome. I think it's, what you're saying is a good idea.
Yeah.
It needs to be somewhere where ice won't get it, but I feel like if it's in an area where a boat's gonna, like, if I go in there, I'm gonna drag that up.
Well, we've discussed that as well. If the area was successful, I mean, we've been discussing all kinds of things. The opening end is, we need a little bit of success before we even address the thing of opening. But this, we could get creative. Say we have an area on the west side, we could have this area as a reduced limit area. All right, so if you go in there with your boat and you have 2 licenses on board, you can get 2 bushels. Okay, a hand picker can steam out there with his skiff and enjoy a pretty nice day and get a bushel. So we have all the creativity in the world with it. But I mean,
But I'm saying, I'm just
yeah.
saying, if I run my dredge through there and we're hauling back and dumping it on the table, and then we're doing circles and dropping it back out, we're just spreading it all out. Like, it's just gonna move, especially with only 30,000 oysters, you know? And
Well, remember the culture. Yeah.
but we're gonna spread that culch around and crush all that culch too.
Well, that's the idea of that second year, is that culch should be saleable, and you guys should be, you know, breaking out culch and throwing out seed there as well. So I mean, like, we're not married to the west side. It just, all right. But I mean, when you think of a place to sight oysters in some water, it just comes to, it's what comes to mind.
I think the west side's not a good idea.
Okay.
Just because
Yeah.
it's good. There's not enough space to fish as it is for boats.
It's just that that's the only lee we have. If it's rough out, we go in the west side, we go fishing. We got people out of town now in Chatham that doing comps. They took 25% of the Wellfleet Harbor with these comp traps. They're all everywhere, so we can't fish there. That's why I don't, you know, along the west side, out down by the rock pile and all through there, out by the 5 can and all around there, it's all comp traps. We can't fish there anymore. So we lost all that. There's twice as many boats going in the water this year than there's ever been in the water. Okay? So if we take the west side away, we got no place to go in the lee, except for, I don't see anything wrong with going from Flat Rock in the shoreline.
Well, I got a
Well,
point.
we can't fish anyway. I personally don't sell 1 oyster a year. If I get oysters, I throw them back over. I never bring an oyster home, ever. So I could care less. Put them on the inside of Flat Rock, just don't take up space on the outside of it.
Well, what about the area from the no drag line to the Herring River?
Yeah, I've had some trouble with burying it. Now we had a lousy barge that didn't allow for very surgical placement of that. So I mean, that situation got remedied today.
I feel like too that happens out in Middle Meadow too, because I mean I remember seeing culch out there, but it gets buried up, you know, it's so shifty.
Yes, there's no perfect situation, but I mean right now, 1, 2, 3, we have 3 of our most frequent of regular dragger men with us. So if you want me to figure out something else besides the west side, we'll go back to the drawing board.
What about, remember that Audubon had that grant that was like
Yeah,
inside of all
Yeah.
those rocks?
yeah.
That grows good oysters there.
Yes, yeah.
And it's in deep water.
Yeah. Well,
Just you
no,
can't-
I mean, if we come out of this meeting agreeing to keep me out of everywhere but Flat Rock area, we've accomplished something. Okay?
I feel
So
like-
I would appreciate if you guys, even if we don't do it, I would just appreciate you guys as we go into this, just to keep an open mind, if you would, please.
So, I mean,
Just
pickers,
say-
yeah, pickers can
Plenty of
go.
room on the inside of that rock.
Yes.
Go from the drag, no
Yeah,
drag line,
yes.
all the way as far as you
Yes,
want to
no,
go.
but we,
You
yeah.
can't go in there anyway.
And all
Yeah.
outside Lieutenant Island in those rocks, like a picker can just walk there.
And there's
Yeah.
a lot of areas,
Yeah,
there's more than five
that's
acres.
fine, that's fine.
There's probably
That's
20
fine.
acres in there.
Because
That's
that'd be
fine.
awesome. I mean, I would.
Okay,
I would
so-
love that.
Can you show me on that?
I'm fine with, outside of the Flat Rock area,
Correct.
of leaving the west side alone.
Yeah. That's
Okay?
cool. That's good.
But will you guys you guys just keep an open mind about
See
it.
all those rocks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just keep it,
As long as you keep it in that shallow,
Those
we can't
rocks.
fish in there
Can't go
anyway.
in.
I know, I know. And we're trying to put
He's talking about
spawning oysters
here.
out of ICE's harm's way,
I
which
think
we
you
can
have
never
20
do.
acres there.
Huh?
If you went from the no drag line
So,
all the way down, you
Just tons of
have
rocks.
20
can't
acres.
go in there.
You
Can't
have
really go in there.
4 times.
All right, yeah. It's like I said, I put stuff there before. I'm not in love with the
We'd
area
be doing
because of the way the
something
tide dumps out of the
Jared,
river.
you could get
But I'll
in
give
there.
it another go.
There's oysters
It's gonna
in
be
there.
hard for.
Yes, but
Gary,
remember the
somebody
main
with
thing
less experience
is
to get
we're
in.
not gonna dump
I
culch,
mean, I could-
On
dead
top of the
shell,
oysters.
It's gonna
on
be
top
really
of
hard for me.
large oysters,
Which I
and
think
you know
is
what I
a
mean?
great thing.
And while if the area's big enough,
It would give them
we wanna
more.
allot
more
some of these
people would use it.
contaminated
It would
plants
benefit
there
more people.
as well.
It's pretty barren right now anyways. Last time I towed through there, it wasn't.
Well,
that
yes,
bad.
stuff's starting to come
I
out of
could
the
get
bottom,
there. They would
and
want-
this
it would
week,
spread.
I'm gonna dedicate myself
I think more people
to going and
could
finding
utilize it
spots.
there.
Right.
Okay, but the thing is, I mean, we're looking for some water. We're looking for some water. The town paid good money for the seed. All right, like I said, costs us up to $1,000 a load. So we would like a significant allotment of our propagation budget, if you will.
Well, I think you should try a couple different places, one on the east side too. See what.
Okay, all right, but the whole thing is, this whole thing is island theory. You create an island where there's a lot of growth, and there's a lot of stock, and there's a lot of spawning, and you hope it expands. That's what you'd do if you were managing bunny rabbits, deer, Arizona scaled quail, whatever you want to do. It's what's on.
Okay, speaking of, when I was constable, we had a big thing with the Audubon Society on the rocks inside of the tin can, Lieutenant Island. It was my belief that it wasn't gonna work, and I told them, don't do it, it's gonna bury up. Because Lieutenant Island and Billingsgate Island, Billingsgate Island and Jeremy Point has withered away so much. In the winter, you get so much northwest wind there. We never had the waves in the 70s and the 60s. And they said, well, let's take a core sample down and we'll see all the oysters that used to be there. Yeah, they used to be there. But when all that land went under subtitle, now we've got sand shifting there. And when the Audubon wanted, Bob Prescott and I worked on that project, and I dumped a bunch of cults. I dedicated a load of cults just to see what would happen. It buried right up because the bottom has changed and it shifts.
Yeah.
And that place, we tried it there,
Yeah.
and it just everything just buried up because the land has changed, and you're
Yeah.
getting hard waves and stuff there. So, I mean, if anyone thinks we could do that there, go ahead, go for it. But I tried it.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Yeah, and they used the coach balls, which gave a little bit more relief and stability than just the.
They had the coach balls. They had all kinds of
Yeah.
cement objects out there.
Yeah.
All the cults I dedicated one, all buried right up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I tried to tell them I don't think it's a good idea, but whatever, and we tried it, and it didn't work. And I don't think that's a place that you want to dedicate cults, because it will bury up, and
Yeah.
just, you would get nothing out of it.
Yeah. But unless there's just vehement opposition to any type of closure at all, we are going to explore some closures, some temporary closures, even if it's not on the west side, even if we're only limited to Flat Rock, we have some other ideas. The boathouse might be a nice place to close, you know what I mean?
Like I was saying, I was talking to you the other day.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you could show people that there is no money to be made dragging in this area or handpicking.
Yes,
There's nothing there.
yes,
Then you're gonna be more successful selling it.
Absolutely.
So that people can we can shut that down.
absolutely.
And, you know, if you're gonna take something away from someone where they can make a living, you're gonna
Absolutely.
get it. But I don't think people should really complain when you got a place that there's no money to be made. And you're
Yes.
just trying to improve it.
Yes.
And, you know,
Yeah.
that's all I got to say.
So I view this as the beginning of a process. Our phones are on, the door's open.
Would it come back here, like, when you were like,
Okay.
like, would it come back to like SAB, or like, would we be, like, people be notified of like the?
Hell yeah, I want to, yeah. I mean,
well,
Dave, if I got an idea and I'm about to start it next week and I see you drive by, I'm gonna beep and freaking wave at you, and you know what I mean?
I got you.
But I don't know when the next Shellfish Advisory Committee come is, but nothing starts till June 3rd.
Cool.
So if there's another Shellfish Advisory meeting before June 3rd, I will have some more, you know, boots on the ground, observations. You guys will have been fishing for a little while. Let's face it, the stuff is still coming out of the bottom. So a barren area may not be as barren as it appears right now. But the important thing is that we're donating, you know, not donating, donating's the wrong word, sorry about that.
Yeah.
We're allocating a significant portion of our culture and a significant portion of our seed to areas like this in deep water. And if something's weird, if something's going on, all right, it looks like some stuff's dying or whatever, we can open it up and start over again. I mean, you know, nothing is cast in stone. You know, one of the wonderful things about oysters is that they're sexually, even a wild oyster is definitely sexually mature the second year. So, you know, we realize fairly rapid spawning. You know, as opposed if we were trying to do oysters or something to be 7-8 years till it spawn or whatever. So that's where we're at. And
So how about if we bring this to the next meeting?
Yes.
And give people all an idea of time to think about this?
Yes.
And you can-
yes, I will go out this week. I'm going out. I'll have pictures.
Because we've got a pretty
Yeah.
full agenda here that we
Okay.
have to get through.
Okay.
So, thank you, John.
No, thank you
very
guys,
much.
and I just want to emphasize that this, you know, I mean, that we don't have any ego about this. We don't think we're know-it-alls. You know,
Let's,
there's
Right out.
we roll the bones.
okay.
All
Now, we
set?
got a bunch of people out in the hall. You want to come in and get seated here now that Johnny's all done? John, you better.
You can come
All
in.
right. So, because we have to keep this agenda rolling along here, but thank you, John.
My pleasure.
That's wonderful.
Okay, everyone all set?
Oh, you going home now? You're out of here?
Well, that was my, part of my new position was a reduced attendance in Shellfish Advisory Committee. But I just wanted to, you know, I mean, we got a whole month. Think about it, beep at me, throw rocks at us, whatever you gotta do. All right, well, thank you guys very much, and thank you, Nancy, for preparing.
Okay, so we're gonna move right on to
everybody.
this new GPS point number
Yes.
5.
What I just want to do is in your packets that you have, I'm just going to call, there's like the draft propagation plan. Then there is this printout, which is Cohog Relay Proposal, which don't worry about the west side if that's not what we're going to do, but I wanted to put something on paper. Then we have this, which is these are the places that we are in the MEPA process of getting approved for coaching. And Johnny and I are going to add a lot more.
Now, the MEPA process is the one that Hillary took care of us
That's right.
before that we have to. and
This is for
MEPA.
it's Mass Environmental something review.
Okay.
Policy Act.
Policy Act, okay.
Thank you.
Policy Act, okay. And that
So-
is by the state or the feds?
It's the state.
It's the state.
So, and this map shows everything that is in the approval process for us to be able to culch. These are historical culching locations. And I sat down with Johnny and Chris, and there's others that we're gonna be in the process of adding right now, because it's at the state for review. This is for our culching propagation efforts, not for nitrogen mitigation. But if anybody were to want to put nitrogen mitigation using oysters, they would have to come through us and the conservation agent and this map. So it's not, I just wanted to be clear about that. And then there's one more map. Oh, this was just a map that I put in case people want to draw on this map and then drop it off in a truck or with us or at the office. If you want to draw your ideas for rotating closures, please use that map there. It's like a chart. Okay. Now, the last thing for me is, so when you look at the map, the last page, which was this map, there's a red, well you can't see it, there's an X. It's point number 5. It's a little bit hard to read, but it is, so here's the end of the jetty, which is point,
10?
so hard to read. Yes, so point number 10 is the end of the jetty. The recreational shellfishing area goes from that point out to I think it's the red can, which is number
8.
10, is it?
10,
God, you
no,
guys are
10 to 18.
Well, come on now.
No, it's not 12, that's Natchez Creek. I'm looking at the points, so if you look down the points,
That is 12.
it's the 12 can. So it's number 16 on the map, point near the number 12 channel marker. And then it goes in, and in the regs, number 5, end of the first groin south of the Burton Baker landing. And that's point number 5. So this is the triangle that denotes the recreational only area. The X is actually on the northern jetty. It's the first jetty south, it's the first groin south of the jetty, but it's the northern jetty to Burton Baker, and ours is the southern, because you can recreational shellfish all in front of Burton Baker. So, these are the new coordinates, gotta change the map.
Wait,
And-
so we can this line right here, this is to the first jetty now?
It was to the first jetty in our regs, but it was never enforced like that. It's
Oh,
always
okay.
been enforced for the second jetty. So you're not gonna notice anything on the water?
I thought we got some more.
No, sorry, wrong direction. It's just been wrong in the regs.
Okay, it's been wrong in the regs.
It's been
but-
wrong, the Latin launch was wrong, but it says the end of the first groin south of the Burton Baker landing.
So it won't affect the draggers, is what you're saying. It's really,
It's what we've been enforcing to date.
okay.
I called somebody last week on it.
Got a hand up.
Barbara, Nancy, somebody.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I just
Barbara.
want to point out that the lots and longs are some of them are degrees, minutes, seconds, and then this one's in decimal degrees, and they should all be the same units.
Yeah, that's just because I don't understand it, and I just copied and
Yeah,
pasted from
most
something.
people are using decimal degrees now, so all of them should really be changed. That's an easy.
So how about if I do that? How about if you guys, we do a motion that we will change all of the lots and laws to decimal degrees? And I have a colleague that's been helping me with mapping, and I will ask him to do that.
And then everything will be the same.
Tells me that every time.
He does about decimal.
He's like so, yeah.
He's
like,
mad about it, yeah. All right, so we could say that, you know, you'd like to change the lats and longs to decimal degrees and change the actual lat and long for point number 5. It's what we need to go to the select, and then they change it, then I can officially change the regulations.
Okay. John, is that in your
Yeah, I'll
making
make
a
that
motion?
motion, yes. Yes. I'm not gonna repeat it.
Decimal?
Make it,
Mhm.
make
What
it
did you call
decimal
it, decimal
degrees
degrees?
and rename Point number 5, is that what you want to do?
Change the lat and long for point number 5.
And change the lat and long for point number 5.
And all in favor? Alright. Okay, so if anyone has any more questions for Nancy on the monthly report, I'm sure her office door is open, but unfortunately, we're not gonna be able to pick through this piece by piece tonight because we've got too much on the agenda, but if anyone sees anything that they'd like to bring up at the next meeting, you can always feel free to call me. And if anyone can put anything on the agenda, just let me know what you want to see on it. So now I'm going to go to Martha Craig on the Herring River.
Thank you.
She's going to explain about a stakeholder meeting that's coming up and give us a quick rundown on what's going on with the Herring River.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. My name's Martha Craig. I'm Executive Director of Friends of Herring River. I'll try and be as brief as possible, but this request to come before the board tonight came about because of a potential stakeholders group meeting that was coming up that wanted to talk about shellfishing issues. And so we thought, well, we should go to the shellfishing community to find out what are the outstanding issues versus just giving the stakeholders group basically a rehash of a meeting that we had a joint meeting of, I think 2 years ago in March 2017, where the Shellfish Advisory Board and the Friends of Herring River co-sponsored a meeting to present monitoring efforts that were going on in the Herring River and to get the shellfish community together to find out what are the outstanding questions and concerns that still need to be addressed. So a few updates on that, if I may. I do think there may be a delay in the stakeholders group meeting. There has been some delay in the past because of the need to hold a meeting of the Herring River Executive Council prior to holding the stakeholders group meeting, and so that is still on hold. And Wellfleet and the Park Service and Truro trying to work things out, and we hope to have that moving along now. So it looks like there may be a stakeholders group meeting, maybe not so much in May, but in June. But that's sort of in the works. But what the project proponents, the seashore, the town, Friends of Herring River, heard from the shellfishing community is that they'd like to hear more about the monitoring. And so I just want to give an update on the monitoring plan that's being pulled together and actually reinforced by the input from the shellfish community from 2 years ago. So if I may, just a few points. We heard that the shellfishing community thought that it would be beneficial to have the hydrodynamic modeling in the harbor expanded further out into the harbor. I believe the initial modeling ended up near Egg Island, and we would like to hear that expanded. So that's being done now, and we expect to get the results of that modeling within the next month or so. So I would say, caveat everything, these are works in progress. So I'd like just to update you on these works in progress and how you would like to see things move forward with future meetings to hear about actual results. The Park Service has been collecting water quality data since 2005, and they continue to do that as part of their baseline monitoring. And that modeling and monitoring was expanded to go what they call a longitudinal study up and down the river. And sampling stations 3,000 meters above the dike and below the dike. And they have found that the nitrogen levels are lowest near and downstream of the dike. And that's because near the dike and below the dike, the harbor water, ocean water overwhelms the river water. And that's true throughout all of these studies, is that everything that's looked at, the water that's coming in from the harbor overwhelms the water that's coming down from the river. But it continues to be monitored. So the ocean water has much greater influence on the river than the river has on the harbor. In 2015 through 2018, there was a big study by the U.S. Geological Study. It's called a flow proportionate sample study. And that just confirms what the Park Service was doing, that the concentrations of nitrogen around the dike are more related to the river water, and that the loads are heavier further upstream, and that USGS is working to synthesize all this data. They finished their sampling back in September, and we hope to have their synthesis of all that data in the upcoming months. So that's in the works. That can be presented within the next couple of months as well. The Park Service is working together with Friends of Herring River and the Woods Hole group to work on, they have set out some automated tide gauge stations. There are 5 stations out there right now, including the latest one was out at Old Saw. And they are looking at continuous water level and water quality data, which is available real time on the internet. And those studies will continue and be enhanced through additional data, including nitrogen data, which is included in an upcoming proposal. And there'll also be, the plan is to set out a few additional automated tide gauge stations. So, and the story with that is they've been out there for a couple years now, and they were sort of a pilot program to get things going, see how things work, get it online, real time, work out the kinks, and so now it's at the point where it's working, it's online, the kinks have been worked out, and now they're looking at improving the system by including additional data collection and expanding the stations.
When you say it's online, where would people go online? What would
So
be the
I would have
site
to get that to
people
you. I don't have that here, but I can get that to you. Woods Hole Group has a online link, and also the USGS data is online. And what we want to do, and I'm sorry I don't have the link here because I was
Right.
trying to figure out what everybody's doing all at once. But part of the goal is to collect data that people can use and look at real time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to know, like, what's the oxygen level in the Herring River right now, or 6 minutes ago, really, you could look at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get you those links. I don't have them here with me,
Right.
but I can get you those links. And I know with the Woods Hole tide monitoring stations, because it was originally a pilot program and getting things online, that might be something that is upcoming because they're working out the kinks. But the USGS data has always been available online. But the Woods Hole Group tide monitoring station, now that it's moving beyond the pilot projects phase, will be available for everybody online. So you can look at what's the tide level, what's the oxygen level, and all the parameters that are being recorded. You can look at those in real time, and I'll get you those. And also the goal, and I'm kind of just the messenger right now, is that this group that's doing the monitoring, including the Park Service and the Woods Hole Group and Center for Coastal Studies, would like to be able to come to this board, I would say within the next few months, to really present a broader protocol and projection for all the monitoring that's being done. They're just not there quite yet, so I'm just really providing an update of what's in the works based on a conversation that Nancy and I had, and Barbara, you and I tried to have. And then the biggest thing is that there will be an upcoming, work with me now, so we'll take it slowly, a Wellfleet Harbor seafloor geomorphic study. And that's going to be using high resolution aerial and ground elevation data to understand seasonal and yearly sediment movement. So this goes to the whole sediment question, what happens with the sediment? So National Park Service, Woods Hole Group, Center for Coastal Studies, and the USGS are working together to come up with a comprehensive monitoring plan to look at mapping of the seafloor in Wellfleet Harbor to determine how the sediment moves throughout Wellfleet Harbor. The baseline study should start this year and continue into next year, and will be repeated before construction of the project begins. And the message I have here is that that group would like to meet with the Shellfish Warden, the Harbor Master, and Mayor June to review the study. But I know it's in the works that the Park Service is working together with Center for Coastal Studies and Woods Hole Group to actually refine the proposal for what exactly is going to be done, what data is available. They're going to be using aerial photography and ground elevation data so that they can really get to really refined elevations on the floor bottom and look at sediment movement throughout the area. So those are all upcoming. And
Is that the drone question? Is that something with the drone? Maybe not.
I'm not sure about the drones. I don't have that on my notes from,
I think it's somebody from the Woods Hole Group, but.
that could be, because a lot of the stuff now has to do with drones. Also, prior to construction, there will be fecal coliform monitoring, pre and post construction, above and below the dike, that Friends of Herring River will take ownership of.
Are you getting anywhere near the time that there will be an actual timetable of when we will know when this construction is going to start taking place? If the money has all been gathered yet, if there's enough funding in place?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I can address that. So right now, the project is moving into the permitting phase. With the first permitting application will be with the Cape Cod Commission, and it's called a Development of Regional Impact. It's required because we had to do an environmental impact statement. That will be coming up this spring, likely end of May, and there'll be public hearings over the summer. And then permitting with the state and Army Corps will proceed after that. And simultaneous with the permitting process, there'll be fundraising efforts, primarily focused on federal programs. And the state has also contributed in the capital program of about $11 million for the construction. So we'll be working with the federal agencies on that, so that the hope and the projection is that sometime roughly around 2022 to go to construction. And that that the permitting timeline and the fundraising timeline will all line up for that to happen, taking into consideration all the other time of year restrictions, you know,
Right.
not working during the summer, things like that.
So we're looking at around 3 years before
3
we
years.
really would, so we have that much more time to watch this monitoring, keep this all together, keep going in the right
Yeah,
direction.
and to gather that much more data.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to find, and to ask questions,
Mhm.
and hopefully to get answers.
Right.
And, but the project proponents are trying to respond to the feedback that we've gotten from the Shellfish community about expanded monitoring and sediment movement within the harbor and up and down the river.
So we need to have a joint meeting after the meeting it was originally made, but now it's in June, when
Well,
that information's been gathered.
So that's a
like, when's the
question.
fall?
I think what the group who's working on the monitoring, and it's primarily the Park Service, Woods Hole Group, and Center for Coastal Studies.
Right.
I think they would like to come to the Shellfish Advisory Board and present their overall plan
Right.
to this board, thinking, you know, you guys are really the key to the shellfishing community. And get your input on, should we have a joint meeting with the stakeholders group? You know, what are your thoughts on that? And thinking that probably it would be more in the fall to present any kind of results.
Mhm.
But I think they have expressed an interest just to come and present more of an overall plan. So I'm sort of the pre-meeting.
Right, okay.
That, you know, I'm here to say this is what is in the works. And at a future SAB meeting, they would like to come and actually present the actual plan
Okay.
of what's gonna be presented. But it's, you know, the big new thing is the seafloor mapping effort, because that's big and that's new, and that will tie in sediment movement with elevation, and as well as combined with sort of new and improved or continuously improved tidal gauge stations throughout the system. You know, and maybe a recap of the water quality data that's been collected over the past, 5 to 10 years.
Right. Been a while.
Well, yeah, and they keep doing it, and it keeps being improved, and they find out, they keep, like with the USGS effort, they were trying to find out all sorts of different things, not only what are the levels of nitrogen, but, can we connect it through the volume of flow, and they can talk about, what works, what doesn't work, what's relevant, what isn't relevant, but also wanting to hear what concerns you have as well.
Right.
I always have a quick question. So I think one of the things that people are concerned about are sediment movement. So the studies that are being done now are trying to map out how sediment is currently moving, right, in the harbor?
Mm-hmm.
And then will there be some sort of projection on what could happen when the tidal flow changes with the opening?
Yes, so that has happened in the past, and I think that the expanded modeling into the harbor past Egg Island will help show that. And the Park Service did do a series of sediment sampling last summer, and then working off of sampling efforts that have been done in the past. So that will continue, trying to get really a footprint of what the sediment is like in the different areas, because it seems kind of stable what the sediment type is like, but not only what is it like, but where is it coming from and how does it move, and it shows, most studies show that, everything's heading upriver, except it can't because it gets blocked. So things settle out when they hit the dike.
I think that might be important for John with his propagation plans. If the sediments, if the view based on the information you have or will have changes, and Johnny's putting is stuff in an area that 2 years from now, the sediment might cover it up. It might be an area that you should give us some information on it to help
Well, yeah,
propagation plans.
yeah, we can certainly coordinate with him.
I mean, and I think that's, the granite boulders are worried about that around Dig Island and stuff, because
Yeah.
is that sediment gonna move and settle? So I think it's just good to know where, how is the sediment moving? You know, I think everybody would be interested in learning about that. How is the sediment moving now? What are the expectations in the future?
Yep.
Because I think that's a big concern.
And, you know, I just want to relay that, you know, people working on the project understand that this is Wellfleet's biggest industry. And, you know, they're making every effort to protect that and look at it. And so if there are things that the project should be looking at that they're not, you know, their friends are happy to relay that information. You know, we work more as a conduit to the community and relaying the community's concern to the project proponents. So, you know, that's more the role we play. So we want to hear from everybody.
Could you specifically ask for like what would happen with Pebbly Bar and like inside, back like towards Pebbly Bar where all that like mud is, where Johnny put that coach down, just so that some of the.
I'm writing that down.
That's all part of the study, that
Cool.
whole area.
That'd be
It's
cool.
already been done. Now it's being extended out to the Egg Island area. So that area has already been looked at,
Okay.
and it continues to be looked at all the time.
What do they find?
Yeah, how do we know what they? I mean, it'd just be cool.
I have a feeling Mark Borelli spoke on this
Yeah.
from what they've got now, and he's pretty much the Center for Coastal Studies. He's the guy there that would know what's been done and what's, you know, what the results have been so far.
So mostly what they've shown, just to briefly summarize it, I think you're right, and Kirk Bosma showed this at a meeting 2 years ago, is, you know, almost all the material that could potentially come from the Herring River basically bypasses the harbor and goes out into, Cape Cod Bay because of the flux and the tide, or because it's a flood-driven system. Most of the material actually goes upstream because that's, you know, that's how the marsh builds up, is that, you know, the sediment doesn't really come downstream, it gets pushes upstream because the flood tide is stronger than the ebb tide. So, but, you know, I would put that as questions to them, as something to address as their expertise.
Yeah, I think it's already been presented, but it's good to keep presenting it again and again with the new data that.
Yeah, and I think the reluctance was to say, like, let's have a meeting in May with the stakeholders group and the shellfishing community to show information we've already shown to them. Because so many people showed up and we were really grateful for that. Like, why show them the same stuff? So we'd rather do that, you know, a little bit later when we have more information to
That
show,
makes sense.
if that makes sense
Yeah,
to you guys.
We've been to lots of meetings lately, so we'd like just to say, keep the meeting to when you've got the information. Zach, you had a question?
With all this modeling and mapping, when and by whom will the thresholds for impact be set?
So I think that will be part of the adaptive management plan on how to open up the gates. Because the gates will be open up incrementally, so gradually.
Right.
And that will be part of the information that's used to decide how to open that up. And the sediment is a big balance because nobody wants any sediment covering the shellfish beds. Nobody wants the sediment to come downriver. Everybody wants the sediment to go upriver.
Maybe I could use that as an example, like who is to determine how much sediment is, you know, in the adaptive management plan, what level, degree, amount of sediment, for example, would be considered enough to stop, change, continue?
Right. Well, that's a good question, what the threshold is. And I could pose that to them, like, that's a question from this group.
That's a big one for me.
Yeah,
Because
and
I've heard a lot about the adaptive management, but you know, who's in charge of setting those levels and when will they be set?
So, I can't speak to the exact threshold, but that would be a question.
Yeah.
But what the process would be is that the restoration committee, or whatever iteration there is of that, would be looking at that through the modeling, through, and all that, and they would make a recommendation to the executive council. And it would be the Herring River Executive Council that would make a decision on how to open those gates. And they would take advice from the stakeholders group, and that would be the process. But certainly that would be one of the biggest issues
Yeah,
to look at.
that would be
And
helpful.
I will make sure that that is, a big question.
Yeah, and that would be good just to have kind of a process chart of that
Yeah.
flow, how it goes through.
Yeah, okay.
And I think it's important to have obviously the scientific input, but also on the feet on the ground.
Absolutely. Okay.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions for Martha? On the river? No? All right now?
Is there gonna be any financial compensation when it puts somebody out of business? Because 2 years ago, Nancy can speak for me, that half of Wellfleet's cohogs came off the southwest corner of Egg Island that were taken to market 2 years ago. All of the clams that were determined that Wellfleet sold, half of them came off of that corner next to Old Saw. Off of all my catch reports. Okay, so it's half all the cohogs that left Wellfleet that went to market. Came from that corner off of 6 leases in that corner. So when the silting problem happened, just like what's going on right now, down on Bob Mallory's grant, it's covering up everything down there. We've lost over 1 million cohogs in August this year due to silting. So this thing needs to be very well kept in order, because when we lose that little corner of Egg Island, that's a lot of money.
Well, hopefully it will do the exact opposite. Hopefully we'll be getting rid of silt in the harbor due to it going upstream. And where is the silting that is covering Bob Mallory's grant? That's due to
That's coming from the Warring Basin,
that's coming, that's
So it's
due to
coming
us
on the
not being,
outflow.
not being dredged.
but that's coming on an outflow. Okay, for what they've just told us, that it's all gonna go upriver. Something's gonna come downriver too. Don't just keep going up.
Oh, that's why it should be monitored.
When you-
It'll be monitored, and right now it can't go upriver, so it gets stopped right at the dike.
Right.
But that would be one of the things to look at.
I think that's why I was asking about that area behind Pevely, just
Yeah.
because I don't know, I wasn't aware that they already explained that to us, but, I think other people probably aren't either.
Well, and that's why we keep coming back.
Yeah,
Because
thanks.
people are new and people have questions, and we just want to hear, what are the outstanding questions?
Yep.
And where are things coming from, and, what's happening now versus what might happen later. And it's really important to understand what's happening now.
Right.
So we can look at how does that change through the project, or, maybe something else is going on.
Okay.
So,
So-
thank you for your time.
And you'll let us know when we could have, when you would like to have this meeting with the new information?
Yeah,
the new
so shall I
modeling,
coordinate
so some of
both
these
at best with
questions?
you?
Yeah,
And,
and then I can get it out, but more toward the fall, when more of this modeling is done?
So
we have some
what I've heard is that the Park Service would like to come and present their monitoring plan, if that's helpful or if that's informative to you, and maybe here, because this was sort of a, quick agenda item. And maybe they could hear your questions directly, or they could just proceed with monitoring, work closely with the harbor master and the Shellfish constable, and then present their results later in the fall. So I would leave that up to your preference. I think more information is better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm really grateful to be able to come tonight. Anytime I can come, I think it's helpful. But they did, articulate that they'd be willing to come maybe in June.
In June? Okay. So,
But I'll confirm with them because I'm putting words in their mouths now.
okay.
But if you would find that informative to hear more about the actual plan and the plan that, because I think they do want to get people's input and maybe people's help.
Mm-hmm.
And, who can be collecting what maybe, and then that might inform, what people are seeing and how can people help and just
I think
connect
some
more.
dialogue with the park might be good too, at a large enough meeting that people could really maybe get some more confidence in the park. Because a lot of us have felt that the park said and did things one way and ended up doing them a completely different way. So I think there's some mistrust between the residents of Wellfleet, or some of the fishermen of Wellfleet, and what the park actually says they're going to do and does as being two different things. So it would be good to have that dialogue and let people really express their feelings on that.
Well, and that's good to know, especially like representing Friends of Heron River, just to let everybody know, we are not a project applicant. We support the project, but our bigger role is to be more of a liaison between the community and the project proponents, to let the Park Service and everyone else know what we're hearing from the community and what the community wants to hear, and how can the community feel confident in what's going on. And that's what I feel like our greater role is. It's not to sell you on the project, it's to find out what do you guys need to know more about and how can you feel better about. And I do hear that a lot about the Park Service. So I hear you on that, and I feel it too.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. Does anyone else have any more questions, or are we going to move on here? Good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your
Be in
time.
touch.
Okay, that sounds good.
All righty. Thank you for coming. Nice to see you, Barbara. You're leaving? Bye.
Skip out.
Okay, next Brett was supposed to give us some information on news about how the Wellfleet Shellfishermen's Association is coming along, but unfortunately he didn't make it to the meeting tonight. I did hear that Mike DeVasco did very well at the MSI meeting today, and that he made some real strides on giving us a face with MSI. And he called me before, because he had to go to a selectmen's, the pre-town meeting tonight, but he was very excited about the progress that was made today and felt confident that it went well. So that's good. Dave, would you like to, any updates for, no? Anyone else? Want to say anything about MSI while we're on the subject? What Mike really had a lot of conversation about was the bill, and was able to talk to Chris Sherman about why the bill would be bad for Wellfleet, and try to make MSI understand that every town is not the same, and that it should be a town decision on how they want to handle their lease sales, and not a state mandated decision. So I think that's good news that he was able to make some forward progress there. So if that's it on MSI right now, I'll just move right on to, we have a Hilda Trust update. Town meeting recommendations vote. Unfortunately, the Hilda Trust update is not as, we don't have any real breaking news. I don't know if we're going to have another meeting when we do. it's still right now, until we start hearing some of the deliberations between the selectmen and the lawyers and Hilda Trust, I really have nothing new to add to what's going on. Does anybody else that I may have missed?
I guess it would be good to hear from Nancy what the update is. I mean, who's doing the negotiating, anything we should know?
So, the selectmen are gonna meet in executive session on Thursday, I think,
Thursday?
to kind of try and make some more forward progress on, beginning negotiations for the Hilda Trust. Nothing has been negotiated yet. Right now, it looks like Helen and I and Dan are on the negotiating team, but we haven't met with them yet. Right now, we're just collecting information still, looking into a surveyor to determine boundary lines, especially the seaward boundary lines, because there's some dispute, because it's supposed to be, colonial ordinances say it's
1,650 feet.
or mean low water, whichever is less. So, but there's some things to look into there. There's some talk of getting our own appraisal, because everybody that buys, you might want to send your own person out to look at the property and appraise it differently. And there was one executive session they had last week, just trying to make progress on kind of what the town is going to come to the table with.
Can I backtrack after, just to the other MSI thing that I forgot?
Sure.
Is that okay? We were on the agenda, it said update and possible letter from SAB on House Docket 1109.
Mm-hmm.
Could we write a letter of no support of that?
Does everybody know what the House docket is? No. Well, what happened? Let me find it here. Do you want to explain it? You might be better, David, explaining it.
There
I'll
was
find it.
there was a bill that was filed from that was put in from the MAA to, they call it the privatization bill, but it was, or that's what people have called it, but it's to change the wording of our shellfish regs, to change the words from may to shall, which would mean that you have to sell your grant, your lease. And the WSA wrote a letter of no support, and I think we had asked the SA, we were going to ask the SAB to do the same thing. That's what that whole MSI thing was about, was that MAA. That's what we kept talking about. That's what that MAA bill was that just kept getting brought up at that meeting. That was like a merry-go-round.
It's got something to do with home rule. I am trying to figure out what. Yeah.
Yep. So they say that, there is, it's another step towards taking away, circumnavigating home rule. The way that you still would, home rule would still apply, like when you really read it, to be clear on things. But like, I think that this would be a way to go about circumnavigating that in the future. So from my understanding is the MAA is currently like changing. I just talked to Stephen Wright yesterday, and they've like adjusted that bill. So I think it really, we don't know much about it, especially now that they've changed it again or updated it. And I think that we should write a letter of no support.
When is that House bill up for a vote?
Like 2 years from now or something like that.
I don't
Yeah.
think it hasn't even been picked up by committee.
No, it's
Yeah,
like,
so
it's still
nothing right now.
just a bill.
So should we wait until they've changed, till we find out what they've changed now from this before we write a letter of no support, so that we know we're writing a letter of no support on? Like, because we want to keep at this, and we want to keep it at the forefront. So would we be better to hold our comment for like another until
Until you know.
we know what we're
I'd
commenting
like to
on.
hear somebody either in this group or in the Shellfish community come up with a reason that's easy to, it should be pretty easy to blurt out to make sense to people that this is why we oppose it.
Do you want me to read the letter from Michael DeVasco?
Yeah.
Which is, he wrote it, but it was on approval of all the Wellfleet fishermen that are part of the Wellfleet Fishermen's Association. Dear Senator Representative, as Vice President and on behalf of the Wellfleet Shellfishermen's Association, WSA, a coalition of aquaculturists and wild shellfishermen, I am writing to urge you to oppose the recent proposal, HD 1109, to privatize aquaculture licenses in the state of Massachusetts. The language changes in the bill would undermine home rule and the town of Wellfleet's ability to oversee and manage its fishery. Furthermore, the lack of a residency requirement will undoubtedly lead to a consolidation of the industry. It would place the resource into an open market, which deep-pocketed entities would purchase the means of production, drive down the price, and virtually make it impossible for small operations to compete in the marketplace. This takeover would be detrimental to the historic fishery and flourishing aquaculture community of Wellfleet, as well as other coastal communities that are soundly managing their resources. Wellfleet's oyster heritage dates back centuries as a community and has garnered knowledge from generations of shellfishermen, passing their stories and wisdom from one independent fisherman to the next. Through its grassroots aquaculture system and management, Wellfleet has remained a leader in cultivation and wild fishing. It is currently the largest producer of shellfish in the state in terms of its dollar value and landings, and represents over 20% of the state's shellfish economy. Wellfleet is one of the oldest aquaculture communities in the state, with over 100 aquaculturists operating on 1 to 7 acre licenses dating back to the early 70s. Many of the shellfishing grants are owned and worked by multiple generations of one family. We urge you to preserve the traditional small-town system of administration that has seen us prosper through the years. The Wellfleet Shellfishermen's Association is part of a newly formed coalition of shellfishermen and aquaculturists. We are working with numerous groups throughout Cape Cod in order to give a voice to aquaculturists and shellfishing families in a form of a collaborative. We are currently representing over, I think it's like 75 members right now, and the list is growing by the day. We are the only association in Massachusetts that represents both wild shellfishermen and aquaculturists. As your constituents, we urge you to oppose any effort to privatize and monetize aquaculture licenses. We assert that Wellfleet has cultivated a boutique oyster industry built on the stories and traditions of its tidal way of life. To consolidate the industry is to expel the stories, the lore, and the heritage of Wellfleet. If the HD 1109 were to become law, it would dispose hundreds of small Massachusetts family farms and upend Cape Cod shellfishing industry. Thank you for the opportunity to voice our concerns, and we look forward to hearing from you on this issue as it affects the entire Cape Cod economy. Please see attached pages for signatures in support of this letter. So that was the letter from, he kind of gives an overview of how
that letter from?
they feel. Mike DeVasco, but he wrote it with the blessings of the rest
The
of
Wellfleet Fisher.
Fishermen's Association.
That's what I was trying to say. It's just, there's a lot to it. You can't just like
Yeah, all
blurt
right,
out.
yeah, well.
I have an extra copy of this, if you'd
Yeah,
like
if I could
to
send you one,
keep
then
it,
I
so you
missed it.
can,
That's fine.
because I have
And
another
the
copy
select
here.
board also, I think, voted that they were gonna sign a letter too, right?
Draft a letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the part that stands out, well, first of all, I mean, if this House bill passes, that doesn't mean that Wellfleet can't still institute its own stricter, like the residency requirement, for instance. That's what stuck out at me. That wouldn't eliminate our ability to do that, right? We could still
It
make people.
depends,
It
if
did-
it changes from, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
May to shall, then it takes the power.
May to shall. What is?
Like may, that
have a-
means that you can make different, you can May means you have discretion, right? So a town can
Yeah,
opt in or out. Shall means you have to do
Yeah,
this
but
from the
put
state
it in the
level.
context of what part of it are you talking about? Maybe
Okay, it
shall
says-
what?
An act relative to shellfish aquaculture licenses. I'll give you this also, this is the actual docket, so
Yeah.
you can look it up and we can do some more research on it, because I'm just gonna throw in this at you without,
I kind of remember what the intent of it was, and I'm just still not clear. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I mean, I don't know, unless there's some foreign entities that they're going to grab our shellfish out here. I always thought that home rule, and we always have the right to make our rules stricter than like the rest of the state. If they want to go along with some of this, they can. But unless it's binding on us that we cannot have a residency requirement anymore, I don't,
It opens the door to it.
Yeah, all right, well, I'm still a little confused about it. I mean, obviously, I'm not, I'm not really that up on it, but,
It has to do with a couple of specific sections in Mass General Law,
yeah, okay,
like
well,
between 57 and 68.
all right, that's a
So,
pretty good
but
letter right
it's in
there.
there.
you know,
You'll see
I mean,
nicely.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you want me to give you,
I prefer them electronically, but I can certainly scan it and do it myself, so that's fine.
or that
Yeah.
gives you at least a lead to what it is and where it is and what it's referring to.
Okay.
And if we want to wait, if you think it would it matter if we waited till our next
who's
meeting to
responsible?
draft the letter when we can do some more research on it?
I think we should wait one more
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, let's wait another meeting. I'd like to know who's sponsoring the bill. It's probably in there, but.
It is, it's right on the
Cutler.
Cutler.
Okay.
There's the front.
Right.
And Dave, you're saying he's been
Peggy.
lobbied by MAA?
Yeah, from what I got, yeah, from MSI and, well, Scott Soares is,
Acting on behalf.
Well, I guess for a little bit of homework then, anybody that wants to just figure out why this is a bad idea, come up with it in a quick sentence or two and let's get a consensus as to why it's a bad idea.
Peggy? Peggy, first.
Also, the whole rule has to do with permitting, and that's a big item as far as I'm concerned.
How do you mean, Peggy?
It gives the state the right to issue the permits.
streamlined permitting,
Yeah, streamlining big time,
so like the Migos.
which will allow people to come in, say, big corporations, I don't want to be a name dropper, but say like Walmart, can have somebody come into town, buy a piece of property, they are now a resident, they can apply for a permit, not through the town, but through the state, and they can get it, because the whole permitting thing is going to be streamlined. And this is kind of
Ginny,
a
what's
danger.
Oh, yeah, I lost my train of thought. One of the, Chris Sherman is actually the one who wrote the bill, and who owns Island Creek. And we know that in the State House that they've actually hired a lobbyist from the Farm Bureau, a guy named Brett Mitchell, who's been actually reaching out to the Shellfish Fishermen's Association pretty hard. He wants to sit down with us and negotiate something. And they're paying they have about 20% of his time.
They have about what?
About 20% of his time to push this forward. So it's not a benign item, it's not a dead item. In my last conversation with Sarah Peak, she said, after the MSI meeting, which she was at today, she wants me to reach out. She said she'd like about 4 of us from the various towns to go up to the State House and get in front of the environmental committee, because they're the ones who'll be bringing this forward.
Mhm.
And so we'll just come back with some ideas of people to come up there on that, to see to go before the environmental committee so that they understand why this isn't a good idea.
So you talked to Sarah about this particular thing?
A lot, yeah.
And so, all right, so is she worried about this imminently, or is it something where?
Well, she said that she and Julian can kill it,
Okay.
but I also know that, bills can get pushed forward pretty quickly at different various times. And I think that part of the concern becomes that there are people out in Western Mass who've gotten behind this bill, and that they might want to push it forward as well, for whatever various reasons. So, yeah, I don't think it's not a benign bill, and I think that it's something that should be watched, so.
Okay.
Who did you say was hired to lobby?
His name is Brent Mitchell. He's a former Monsanto executive.
And then
Yeah, and he actually offered to come out, he wanted to come out and meet with us and to sit down and, I actually invited us all to come up and meet with him.
And who hired him?
He, Massachusetts Aquaculture Association.
And he's from the Farm Bureau.
He's part of the firm.
He's part of the Farm Bureau.
Yeah, he's, I think, the executive, maybe deputy director?
when you join MAA, you automatically get into the Farm Bureau,
Right.
which is
Yeah, and he wanted to sit down, but we invited him to come out and meet with us.
So he is gonna come out and meet?
The last time we talked to him, he said, well, he wasn't sure that he wanted to do that. And when I asked Sarah Peak's advice on that, she said, you tell him that Route 6 runs both ways, and if he wants to talk to Wellfleet, he can come to Wellfleet. So kind of left it at that.
And Chris Sherman is the one that wrote the actual language.
Yeah, Chris wrote it, and he told us that at the Duxbury MSI meeting.
And you heard that he's changing some of the wording.
Chris Sherman. I mean, I talked to Stephen Wright yesterday, and they said that they were changing the wording.
I'd heard that too.
So if you're changing the wording, that means we need to look at it again.
Right,
Right.
yep.
Just need to keep following it along.
Yeah, well, that's all right. Keep it on the radar, you know.
Does that mean all our regs we put together, all the regs we put together in our Wellfleet document will be no longer? Will be taken
No,
over
it's
by the
just
state?
certain sections. Certain sections of Mass General Law would change, which would mean that how our regulations related to those might be null and void, or might have to be rewritten.
I think some of this stuff was to like circumnavigate, like the not in my backyard thing. Like people, you know, they didn't want to see aquaculture bags and stuff like that happen, but through that, a lot of other things can go down too.
It's also about people wanting to be able to bequeath it to their heirs, so that if and to be able to sell it to anyone,
Get out
because
of the
you have somebody
business.
who maybe has worked all their lives
Yeah,
as an agriculturist, and they want to pass it on, or they want to be able to pass it on to their children. I mean, there's ways to do that with life insurance.
Those kind of things are easy to make an argument that Wellfleet's been doing this, and we seem to be dealing with it, and we have a good system here that we like, and, you know,
So when
I mean,
you
we
get
already
when you
have-
get things like the Hilda Trust though,
well, that's another issue. That's kind of the segue right into what we're gonna talk about, the Elder Trust is the same thing, you know?
And the way our regs are written right now, people can add their children on, right, Stephen?
Yes.
Yeah. Iris is on his grant.
But
So
will
it's
that
still, it's
generate-
will that
permissible.
We don't want to lose that.
But you wouldn't lose it. It would take it out of the town's hands, that you wouldn't come to the town to ask for it.
Well,
It would just be, it would become like you owned the grant. Right now, nobody owns the grants. The town gives permission. The town gives a lease. And if you privatize it, then the grant itself becomes something that you would own. And I believe you would still have to come to the town to, it's confusing. I don't even know.
Because you own it, that's part of this new thing, was my understanding, is that you would be forced to sell it. You couldn't just give it to your kids, you know, sell it to your kids. You couldn't keep going down the line.
No, yeah, you could. You could with this. You can do it currently by adding somebody onto your grant, or in the future, if this were to go through, then you wouldn't have to ask permission from the town. You could just, it would be that grant. Once you get it from the town, you can sell it, and that's something that the town doesn't want. There's not one constable that I know that wants to take jurisdiction of grants out of the domain of the Board of Selectmen and the towns and home rule and give it to the private citizens. Nobody wants that.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you end up, you know, the people with the deepest pockets instead of the hometown families could end up with the leases.
And it's what it's really kind of the crux of what we're dealing with the Hilda Trust. Because it becomes, even though the grants don't become private property, they're still issued by the town, but the bottom then has become private property, and you can actually sell that. It's even, you know, a little bit worse of a situation compared to the MAA bill, because they do own the bottom, and they can sell it if they want, which they're trying to do now.
Think they
Hopefully
can.
to the town.
They can.
Can I just say one other thing too? There's also, you know, there is this national pressure, right, that we're seeing in the shellfish industry that's also driving some of the privatization piece. And I think Massachusetts is unique in that we do have home rule. And when you look at these various shellfish initiatives that are happening across the country, through the, you know, the NOAA shellfish initiatives that get picked up in different states, one of the first things they look at, that's been looked at, like Conservation Law Foundation went out in 2009 and did a report on all the states and what would need to be done, steps to privatization. So there's definitely this larger overlay to this as well. That's a
Well,
piece of this,
When
so.
it comes to the MSI, which is what we're talking about now, that's something that I still would like to hear from people in Rhode Island, because they've been doing it for a while down there, right?
Yeah, it's awful. Do you know the
Well,
one from
that's
the-
what I hear, but so why don't we hear from somebody?
I have someone if you want him to come
Should
sometime.
join the
Sure.
association, John.
Join the Rhode Island Association?
No, the Walkley
Oh.
Shellfishermen's
Oh, yeah.
Association.
They went from like, in Narragansett Bay, like 3,000 cohoggers,
Mhm.
down to about 300 cohoggers. Dave has a story about boat builders, I mean, it's really impacted their industry. quite a bit.
About what?
About boat builders, right?
Oh, yeah, I heard them, that's very.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'll be quiet.
Yeah, okay, well, that's
So-
been my impression too, is that it's not been received well by towns, by states that have implemented it.
Now, so John, you can join the Wellfleet Shellfishermen's Association as an associate member for $25, and that puts you on the list for the emails, for the blast, for all the information that comes out.
And now you get Chip's cool sticker too.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a sticker.
You don't need to be a commercial shellfish? No.
Not to be a supporting member, an
Yeah.
associate member.
And recreational too, we're reaching out to the recreational people as
Well,
well.
I already
sure.
paid my, I
I'm a
$10 bucks this year for my recreational license, so.
You paid the
I paid the
$10.
extra money for my recreational license. Did it go from 50 to 60 this year?
No,
Mine went down to
it
20.
did not go up.
Didn't go up.
Nope.
When Paul's been 60.
You guys didn't vote up any changes?
No, we made
Nope.
no changes.
It's a couple of years ago, before my time.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so is there anybody else got anything to speak on MSI, or are we just gonna wait and write this letter when we have more
Next month.
information? Let's do this next month.
Sometime Julian Sears said he
Okay.
was gonna be involved with,
Okay, and we're kind of still stuck on in the same place until the selectmen get through that meeting on Elder Trust that we are right now, so there's really not a lot to talk about. You know, how could we recommend to, you know, vote to recommend the purchase of the property or not if we don't know what's happening yet? Unfortunately, I'm gonna skip right, this, next we have the Shellfish Management Plan, and the next step to include the 208 wastewater plans. I think you know, it's getting to be 9 o'clock now, so we're just gonna have to roll that over to the next meeting, because we've just got too much on our plate right now. Because I have to bring up something that I need to be really careful how I do this, because I can only bring up what happened, but we cannot discuss it because it's not been on the agenda. But I needed to bring it to everybody's attention that what the article we voted on at the last meeting, which is Article 35, the Water Resource Director article, as it was printed in the warrant at that, what we had in front of us. And we voted to recommend it 6-1. It got changed to Article 36 from Article 35, and it's a completely different article than what we voted on. So we can't discuss this right now because it wasn't on the agenda, but I can tell you that Article 36 is a municipal water supply system wastewater funding article versus what we voted on, which was for a water resource director.
Okay, substance of both are different, is what you're saying. But what's in the warrant is not the same at
Is
all.
not the same.
Not just a different number.
Not just a different number, correct. But we cannot discuss the substance of these at this meeting because it was not on the agenda. I can only relay what happened technically, but we can, if we would like to decide a vote on Hilda Trust and a vote on this article, Article 36, we would have to have another quick meeting before town meeting where we have
That's
more
what I'm saying.
information.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's, town meeting's coming right up, so.
Town meeting's the 22nd. If we could have an afternoon meeting, it's low tide at 8 o'clock in the morning, I would have enough time to post a meeting, if I posted it tomorrow, that we could meet the morning of town meeting, or I mean the afternoon of town meeting, like a 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or a 3 o'clock meeting. I was even told that I could meet like at 6 o'clock, right before the actual town meeting, by Joe Powers. Do we want to try to have another meeting, to have these, a quick meeting to do these, to discuss what's happened with Hilda and what's happened on this article, just those two things before town meeting?
Yes, I mean, anybody from this.
We
group-
should, we really should.
Get you guys to town meeting.
And when is town meeting?
The 22nd, Monday the 22nd.
Okay.
So we would have to, I would have to post this tomorrow on just those two items, and we would have to have a meeting on the 22nd,
What time of day?
because we've got Good
What is
Friday.
22nd?
The 22nd is Monday,
Okay.
This Monday.
This
this
Monday.
coming Monday.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so if we, what about like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, like a quick, an hour-long meeting, and then people have a break to go to town meeting? Or would you prefer getting together at like 6 PM and then go directly to the town meeting?
I can't be here till 6.
You can't be here till 6? Do we want to try to get this room at 6, and then we can all move to the town meeting afterwards?
And what time's town meeting start?
7.
Know this, okay.
It starts at
Gonna give you
7.
enough time.
What?
That ain't gonna give you enough time.
I mean, you can't come before 6, but it's only those two things we have to talk about. Hilda Trust and this article.
Okay, well, I'm all
Okay.
for trying, I gotta tell you, maybe we'll know a little bit more about the trust by then, but,
Zach can only
You
be.
can start it earlier, and I can come when I can come. I might be able to be here a little bit before 6, but.
Okay, you want to aim for 5:30? Be out of here by 6:30 to be able to.
Totally gonna be, I don't have to come. I don't care.
Barb,
All right.
I'm 50/50, I might have a closing that day.
You might have closing that day. You're 50/50. Okay, well, let's try.
Once you have it at the elementary school, like 4 to 6, finance committee does that.
At the elementary school, where at the elementary school could we
Well, we're in
have
the
it?
library, but there's a,
With the
the
cafeteria.
cafeteria.
Cafeteria at the elementary school?
No, that's a good idea.
Well, then you
Move
right
one
Then
there,
we're right there.
then you're kind of missing.
real estate
Yeah.
closing?
And how do I book that? Do I go to that?
Post it and, well,
The registry.
Ask the elementary school if it's okay. I mean, you don't go to the town hall to book a room at the elementary school, obviously.
no,
Just
but
never done it.
you post it, everything's available because everything's closed. Obviously, it's not gonna be kids in the library. Just say that's where you're gonna have your meeting, and it'll be open, because the janitor will be there. Cafeteria, we got the library, we do it pretty much every 3 times.
You've got the library, so you're
Yeah.
already gonna be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're asking for the cafeteria.
So we could ask for the cafeteria.
Cafeteria.
Okay.
The building's gonna be open anyway. They're gonna be getting ready for town meeting anyway, so in other words, it's not like there isn't somebody there to have it open.
Right.
So they should be able to let you in.
Okay, so 6 o'clock at the cafeteria on the 22nd. Does that sound okay?
What's for
I will
dinner?
post that tomorrow.
What's gonna be for dinner?
However, can I make a comment on
Yes,
that, or
you
is that
can.
inappropriate?
You don't.
So we took a vote on Saturday night at the Wellfleet Shellfishmen's Association on Article 35, is it 35?
Article 36.
36, and we voted no, because in that article, it gives specific, it says, for the plan will move forward if it's voted yes. And that was of concern to the membership, because we still don't have answers regarding the nitrogen mitigation plans. and all of those
Unfortunately, Ginny, I'm not
Okay,
supposed to be
I'll stop my
discussing this.
comment.
Joe Powers was very clear
Okay.
on that. So if you would be willing to come to the meeting with
Definitely.
information,
Yep.
so that we can hear that at the meeting, because
Yep.
I don't want to
Seemed like we're discussing.
overstep my bounds and be discussing something I'm not
That's what I was
supposed to
saying,
discuss.
my comment, that's my
Yeah, I'm
comment.
trying to stay in the,
Yep.
all right, so we're gonna have another meeting. Sounds good.
Can we set the May meeting?
Pardon?
Can we set the May meeting?
Set the May meeting,
Yeah,
yes,
that's a
let's
good
set the
idea.
May meeting, maybe, set the May meeting. Will be long past, do we wanna go toward the end of May? What are we on? Middle of May?
Middle of May.
Middle of May. Beach cleanup is the 11th. I talked to Nancy, and she said she would put out an email, to let the newspapers know.
Yeah.
And May 11th.
May 11th is
Beach cleanup day. So do we want to do this?
Is it 8 to 8?
Barb, you got somebody back there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For that May meeting,
Uh-huh.
can we ask for something to be added on as part of the agenda?
You certainly may.
My brother asked me to come for the reason of it. Alfred did. And it's in regards with wintering over,
Okay.
because we still have a mess in the harbor.
And hand in hand with overwintering, we want to talk about plastics.
Yeah, we need to talk about everything in general.
So anything that
And
makes
right
a
wings.
mess.
Because-
Pardon?
And right wells.
Because we have a whole bunch of plastic still in the mooring basin, and that's a user area for a lot of people. And it's gonna be there all summer long in the mud. And everybody doesn't have the ability to not go through some of that mud. They're gonna be all fouled up in it.
Right,
It's gonna be a hazard. It's not
Yeah.
even the tenants, it's the envelopes that are still all in the mud. All that stuff that's pushed down the mud. In
Yeah.
other words, I think we need to talk about it so that we can get this squared away before next winter.
We sure do.
Because as you just said, we don't need this plastic all over the harbor. Because
No.
that's gonna be the next thing, that's gonna be the next thing that they're gonna start going after us for.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't go away.
Especially
Plastic
after
don't
that
go away in
photo.
our environment, in other words, in the waterfront.
I think that's a really good, yeah, we definitely need to talk about that, so,
So in other words, if it's on the agenda, it can be addressed, right?
exactly.
Okay.
Yep, oh, the other thing that has been brought up over and over that we need to put on the agenda, but I'm gonna, Michael Palante has asked me again to put on the agenda the possibility of adding Powers Landing to the allowable pickup area for Vibrio season. So that there would be 2 areas that would be allowed for pickup. Because we've been saying, we would like Michael to come present it, but he said if you can put it on the agenda, then I will come to the meeting. So,
Is that a state
I'll
thing?
put that.
I thought it had
It
to
is
be
a state.
here.
That's why we need to discuss it.
We have an exemption right now,
Oh, yeah?
and it's for 3 years. From the
To be
state,
at the pier.
that is at the pier.
Right. But I'm gonna put that on the agenda because Michael's been really concerned that he hasn't had a chance to speak out his,
Well, there's Vibrio hearings that the state that might be appropriate to bring it up to the Vibrio hearings with the state.
Yeah, except for it's from the DPH, not from the DMF. It's an exemption issued from the Department of Public Health because it has to do with going to the dealer. That's where we get our exemption. But maybe.
They're the ones that are hosting the meetings.
No, but the exemption and the whole thing about where you can transfer oysters is under the Department of Public Health, not under the Division of Marine Fisheries. And the May 9th meeting is Division of Marine Fisheries.
Okay.
So everybody should mark their calendars for May 9th. It's 1 to 2:30 at the Eastham Town Hall. If you are a first-year permit holder, wild commercial permit holder, or if you had your commercial permit last year as your first year, but you did not attend the Vibrio training, we're asking for mandatory attendance
And that's in Eastham at the,
Yep.
at the town hall.
at the Eastham Town Hall. Yeah,
And that's May 9th.
May 9th, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, okay. So how about for our next meeting,
Oh, we also have the 6-month residency, remember that? We wanted to get that back
We
into our
wanted to put that up.
definitions.
lots and lots. We could have meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. How about, what's good for people? How about Wednesday, the 15th of May? It's
That's good.
low, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's a minus 0.2. If we have it at 7 o'clock at night, that gives us, what, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4 hours after low water?
7 o'clock on the 15th.
7 o'clock on the 15th on a Wednesday?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
not sure, but I'll try.
Your Wednesdays aren't good, Nancy?
No, just that Wednesday, I'm not sure if I have a family thing going on, so I'll check into it.
Okay.
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock,
7 o'clock.
Wednesday the 15th. And, shall we adjourn?
We shall.
We shall. All right.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
Barbara.
coming, everybody.